Plants and human culture have an intimate relationship. Learning about the roles of plants in human culture can help us understand how and why this relationship exists. One example of this can be found at the Desert Botanical Garden in Arizona. This garden spans 140 acres and displays more than 50,000 plants. It is cared for by 821 volunteers and visited by 450,578 people each year. At the Desert Botanical Garden, we will see the interactions between plants and human culture.
What is the Botanical Garden? Botanical gardens may include a collection of cacti, herb gardens, and plants originating from specific parts of the world. The origin of botanic gardens trace back to the 16th century with the study of botany during the Renaissance in Italy. Botanic gardens served as medical gardens. During the 17th century, the purpose shifted from medical gardens to displays of plants from the European colonies and other distant lands. During the 18th century, they were used more for educational purposes. Botanists tried to organize all the new species that were discovered during the 17th century. While retaining the themes from the previous centuries, today's botanical gardens focus on educating the general public about the issues surrounding plant conservation and sustainability.
The Desert Botanical Gardens began in 1939, opening the doors to the public when a group of locals spiked interest in conserving the fragile desert environment. In order to open the garden, a German botanist rounded up similar activists with a Save the Desert sign, and they began the Arizona Cactus and Native Flora Society to sponsor it. During the war in 1942, the state of the garden was left fragile and volunteers were needed to help sustain the site. At the end of World War II, W. Taylor Marshall took over the garden and increased its collections from 1,000 specimens to almost 18,000 specimens, comparing to its now 21,000 plants. In 1985, Desert Botanical Gardens joined the Center for Plant Conservation, which was a group of botanical gardens devoted to preserving rare flora in the United States. Most recently, in 2008, cactus and succulent houses opened, along with an agave forest.
The Desert Botanical Garden was founded with an original idea to save the garden. Today, the garden exists to teach visitors about desert gardens through the conservation and research of desert plants. DBG is a current member of the Central Arizona Conservation Alliance. As a member, the garden makes efforts to ensure sustainable landscape practices in the open areas of Arizona. The Desert Botanical Garden is heavily involved with local organizations such as Spaces of Opportunity. As a primary member of this organization, DBG rents out farm plots on their property to locals and farmers to grow crops, pursuing the organization's mission to help South Phoenix families have affordable access to organic and healthy foods, an active lifestyle, and connection to their culture. DBG, in connection with SOO, wants to transform a food desert into a food oasis. In addition to this cause, DBG has its own on-site community garden, which was founded in 2012. It contains 35 beds and half a dozen fruit trees, producing organic produce, herbs, and flowers. This garden acts as a model to teach locals about the best practices for at-home gardening in a desert ecosystem. It is maintained by 20 to 30 volunteers on a daily basis. DBG also takes action to preserve local wildlife, especially the monarch butterfly, through their milkweed garden. DBG garden employees and volunteers work with schools and community centers to plant milkweed to help spread their cause. In order to encourage garden visitors to take action, DBG sells milkweed in their garden center for at-home planting. Every day, the garden offers tours to visitors and numerous other events to help visitors become immersed in the garden, its history, and its culture.
The Desert Botanical Garden has 27,000 individual plants for which they keep scientific records, and 1/3 of these species is native to the area. The Desert Garden hosts two main types of plants in their exhibits, cacti and agave. They have over 13,000 types of cacti, including the creeping devil, golden club, fire barrel, and many, many more. Due to the vast amount of cacti variations contained in the garden, we will share with you some broad information on cacti in general. Cacti have adapted to be drought-resistant through a succulent stem that has tissues modified for water storage. They also all have spines to make up for their lack of leaves. They all have a waxy coating, and all cacti will flower, which makes them stand out from other types of plants. The garden includes Queen Victoria, Shaw Coastal, and Octopus agave, as well as over 4,000 other types of agave. Some basic characteristics of all agave plants include the fact that agaves have leathery leaves that vary in size, and most have spines at the edges and tips of the leaves. They range in color from blue-gray to pale green and can be variegated or striped. These plants have adapted to the desert by fixing carbon dioxide at night to limit the amount of water loss from the leaf stomata during the hot desert days.
All in all, it can be seen through the Botanical Desert Garden that plants and human culture have an intimate relationship. The garden has a long history, starting when a group of people felt the need to preserve the desert environment of Arizona. It grew into a massive cultural project in which it became a place for preserving and learning about plants. Under human care, the species in the Desert Botanical Garden thrived, and people were rewarded by the educational, environmental, and entertaining benefits brought by the plants.